All right, welcome everyone to Create Connected Leaders. Um, Today, we are going to be taking you through a neurosomatic framework, teaching you some really practical, actionable tools that you can use to work with your nervous system. That you can use to work with the nervous system of your clients to help create ease and safety and lay a foundation for behavior change, for leadership, for a new way of being in the world. So we're going to use a couple tools today. If you haven't brought those, go ahead and grab them now. We're going to need a cloth, and we're going to need something that you like the smell of. Could be an essential oil, coffee bean, anything like that. Okay. So go ahead and grab those if you need as you're coming in. If you want to leave in the chat where you're joining us from and what you're hoping to get out of today's workshop, that's always really exciting for us to see. And we will go ahead and get rolling. I'm going to share my screen with you. We're going to start with a little bit of understanding about what we're talking about with leadership and the nervous system, and then we'll tell you a little bit more about ourselves from there. So the topic of today's workshop is how to create connected leaders using mind-body science. So ways of working directly with the nervous system to make leadership possible, enjoyable, maybe even pleasurable for yourself, and to really have sustained leadership skill in your life, in your relationships with your clients, and throughout all the areas that you're touching and being a leader. So I'll let Matt tell you guys a little bit more about what we're talking about with leadership.
Yeah, we'll do intros in a minute, but I'm Matt from Next Level Neuro. So when we first put out this topic about doing a leadership workshop, we got some questions like what's going on with the neurosomatics talking about leadership? How are those connected? But the truth is, if you're working with clients, you are the leader of your client sessions. If you have a group that you work with, you're the leader of your group coaching communities. You lead your business, your team, or organization if you're in the corporate world. Some of you are leaders in your families, among friend groups, with colleagues. And the truth is you're leading somewhere. And so this isn't just something that's reserved for corporate leadership, but viewing yourself as someone who sets the tone and sets the pace for whatever types of relationships, conversations, and communication that you're in, right? So you have to have a regulated and well-adapted nervous system to be able to do that, right? It really helps with your resilience, your adaptations, your ability to hold space, to set and maintain boundaries. All of these things are so important for you to be able to be an effective leader and communicator. And that really begins with your own nervous system.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're talking about all of this work and we're thinking about leadership, we really want to connect the dots to this idea that we all have an operating system inside of us, our brain and our nervous system, that is driving so much of our behavior. And when we really look at the skills of what an effective leader has, the way that they move through the world, interact with their team, all of this is driven by the state of our nervous system at its foundation. So really our ability to adapt and respond to stress comes from the health of our nervous system. Our resilience comes from the health of our nervous system. How much capacity do we have to handle stress and then adapt positively to that, to create a change that we want and to experience growth, both for ourselves, for our organizations, and with our clients. And also too, when we're working with our nervous system, we are more capable of creating a safe space for our clients and our teams. We are always in communication with one another at a subconscious level, at the level of our nervous system. So the way my posture is, the way my vocal tone is, my eye movements, my facial expression, all of that right now is impacting your nervous system as we interact with one another. And when we have the tools to create regulation and a healthy, resilient nervous system inside of ourselves, we show up that way in our client sessions with others, and we can act as a positive change to the people that we're working with, that we're serving. Our ability to use our voice, to be visible, and to clearly communicate comes from the health of our nervous system and our ability to stay regulated and present. Our ability to set boundaries and to maintain those boundaries over time, that's inherently stressful. And when we have more capacity by working with our nervous system daily, we can set those boundaries. And most importantly, we can also receive boundaries from others without it creating that high stress state inside of ourselves, panic or abandonment, so that we are a safe place for other people to exercise their boundaries and have aligned relationship, right? We can guide our clients with confidence. The way we show up is different, and this establishes trust and helps maintain the longevity of the results of the people working with us in whatever capacity we're serving them. We have the ability to delegate and to trust and empower others when we feel safe inside of our own nervous system, and safe allowing ourselves to not be overly self-reliant. Nervous system regulation allows for emotional regulation. These two things are inextricably linked. So if I don't have the tools and the skills to regulate my nervous system, I also don't have the tools and skills to process, release, and regulate my emotions, which leads to emotional reactivity. Being the kind of leader or coach or person in the world that people have to tiptoe around or don't feel safe expressing themselves, right? So I want to have good emotional intelligence, and that comes from a foundation of nervous system health and regulation. Our ability to stay in our higher order thinking systems and to really train those systems, that allows us to problem solve, to be more creative, to plan, create strategy. And most importantly, with a practice of nervous system regulation and nervous system training, intentional training, we have the ability to experience growth from all of the things that happen to us in our life, whether through the tough times and the good times. We can take all of those experiences, learn, adapt, and grow from them. And that really is a keystone of good leadership, to being able to pivot and learn from the things that happen to us. So true leadership really begins with nervous system regulation and resilience.
Hi, I'm Melanie Weller, and I will also introduce myself in a moment. This old story that we get stuck in, and that a lot of us work with, that we are who we are, that we're not changeable, that we just need to push through the stress, to fight, to keep going, use our willpower, dig in, and take massive action. When you work with the nervous system, there's a whole new way to do this. And when the news story is that we don't have to fight, that we can, Elizabeth, you can go to the next slide, that we can our survival is not about survival of the fittest, it's about survival of the most connected. That when you're connected within yourself, connected in your environment, and connected with each other, that's what creates safety. And when you work with the nervous system, you aren't stuck being the thermometer in every room that you walk into, that you can be the thermostat and you can be the leader. You can set the tone, set the temperature, and create the outcome that you desire for yourself and your clients or patients.
So we'd love to tell you a little bit more about ourselves now that we have this idea of what we even mean by leadership in your nervous system, and a little bit more about the Neuro-Somatic Intelligence Coaching Program and how it came to be. I'm going to stop my screen share now so that you can see us a little bit better as well. So sorry. My name's Elizabeth Christoph, for those of you that don't know me, and I am the founder of Brain-Based Wellness, also the Neuro-Somatic Intelligence Coaching Certification. I'm also the co-host of Trauma Rewired, which is the podcast that teaches you about how trauma lives in your body and what you can do to heal. I'm also an applied neurology practitioner who has been living this work since 2015. So this program and this topic is really special for me. I am someone who has a hefty amount of developmental trauma. I have an ACE score of 6, that stands for Adverse Childhood Experience. And that does show up in my life. I have autoimmune. As an adolescent and into my 20s, I had really intense consequences of living in a state of constant dysregulation. I'm sober now. I've been sober for 16 years, but I was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I've been in the mental health system, like not working in it, but I have been institutionalized before. I have lived out dangerous relationship patterns. I was a binge eater from an early age, engaged in self-harm at an early age. And I've had a lot of experience really living with the pain of having a very abusive relationship to my body. And I have kind of a warrior spirit, and I'm definitely an entrepreneur through and through. So I've always had big dreams and really been deeply called to personal development work, to growth. And I know how frustrating it can be to feel like your body is holding you back from all the things that you feel called to do in this life, whether that's the things in relationship or the big adventures that you want to have or the business that you want to build. I understand what it's like to feel like your body is shutting you down that way. And I've loved and I've worked with many people with complex trauma who are creative and smart and brave, and they want big change for themselves, for their clients, for society. And I have witnessed how those desires can sometimes come in direct conflict with a nervous system that is primed for protection and held in a state of dysregulation and threat. And I've seen the health consequences. And I believe not just that we all deserve that full self-expression and the realization of our dharma and the ability to do all the things and lead in the way that we want to lead, but also that the world really needs it, especially the unique experience of those of us that are on this healing path. So in 2018, my life took a nosedive. I lost my business of 12 years. My partner at the time, my romantic partner, was diagnosed with cancer, and I went into being a full-time caretaker for him as I was trying to keep my head above water financially. And my body really started to break down under all of that stress. And at the same time, all of my childhood trauma came flooding back in like very overwhelming way. And I had this background of applied neurology. I understood what was happening to me. I could see it in my nervous system. I understood that everything was an output of my nervous system, really just trying to keep me safe. And so I began to study somatics and work in that world with a bunch of different practitioners. And I saw as I was doing that, that there really was a deep need for the framework of applied neurology, a way to work directly with the nervous system and the brain to repattern, to dose correctly, and to make that work as safe and effective as possible for the people that were engaged on that healing path. And so as I worked to kind of merge these frameworks, brain-based wellness was born. And not only was I able to help myself come out of that period of intense stress with post-traumatic growth, but I was able to build this business on a new foundation, on a new nervous system foundation, because of the work I did that made it possible for me to show up as a leader, to use my voice, to grow a team, to pivot, to also change all other areas of my life, my relationship patterns. You know, I haven't binged in years. I have a clean house. I have a healthy, secure, safe relationship. I feel at home in my body, able to be present here with you guys, connected, embodied. And so in 2022, I knew that I wanted to bring this framework to the people who are leading in the fields of personal development, mental health, and wellness. So I reached out to two of my mentors and colleagues who are brilliant educators and thought leaders in this work, Matt Bush and Melanie Weller. And to my delight, they both jumped on board. We came together to co-create this program, and MSI was born. And that was the start of all of this. So I'd love to let Matt and Melanie introduce themselves to you. So I will let Matt go first. He's the founder of Next Level Neuro. He's a co-lead educator in NSI and truly an expert in applied neurology.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Elizabeth. Happy to be here and happy to see some familiar faces and a lot of new ones. I'm Matt. I've been in the applied neurology world since about 2004, so going on 20 years. That's kind of scary. I've been teaching professionally since 2010, and so I've taught literally around the world for applied neurology and functional neurology courses, working with the therapeutic world, with athletic training, with performance enhancement, and a lot of pain relief as well. And so I really started getting into the connection between applied neurology and somatic healing around 2014. I had been teaching for 4 years, and I went to a personal retreat. And at that retreat, some emotional and physical trauma from early childhood came crashing back into my life, hit me like a ton of bricks. I literally had suppressed it for 30 years. I did not remember that it had even happened. And so when it came rushing back into my life, I went straight to my neuro tools as a way to regulate my nervous system and kind of get through, like, what does this mean? What am I going to do about it? And I just recognized so many ways it had shifted every part of my view of the world without me even knowing that it was there as a root foundational cause behind a lot of stuff. So it took a lot of regulating and reframing over a few years to kind of work through that process. And I truly believe if I didn't already have a foundation in applied neurology, I probably would have gone through a massive tailspin and kind of lost my grounding and really not known where to turn to get better from that. So very grateful that I was kind of already in that neuro world. But when Elizabeth approached me about neurosomatic intelligence, I thought it's just such a natural fit together. Having been through that experience myself, worked with clients for years to help them regulate their nervous system. And when this is the key to linking like neurology and the world of psychology, emotional healing, somatic healing, and trauma recovery, like this is it. So I've been very happy and blessed to be part of NSI. Around here, sometimes I'm kind of like the neuro guy, science guy, but just love this group and love getting to share with you all today. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. I'm so glad that you're here. And I would also love to introduce Melanie Weller, who is a neurotheologist, studies beliefs in the body, and a vagus nerve expert who's been working deep in the world of physical therapy and vagus nerve health for 35 years.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah. So we can all play small or big, whether we're in the boardroom, the Zoom room, or the family room. And my parents over the course of my life, and even as a little bit as a younger adult, gave me plenty of stage fright in conversations. And I have been in the world of physical therapy and athletic training for over 30 years. And I never had the drug addiction issues, but I was addicted to credentials, and I collected a lot of credentials to validate because I never thought I was quite good enough or that I knew enough. And so that's really where a lot of my dysregulation lived. And so really my expertise in the vagus nerve and treating it as a pinched nerve, which I've been doing for at least 25 of those 35 years. So I was doing a lot of vagus nerve stuff way before it was as cool as it is right now. And it earned me a reputation as the body whisperer. And I always got the people that nobody else could figure out. And I worked a lot in outpatient orthopedic clinics, and that even expanded to getting a lot of, when I had my own practice, to getting a lot of mental health referrals. And I know some of you have heard me tell the story about how in the midst of a health crisis, a marriage crisis, and a lawsuit crisis, where none of my academic knowledge was really useful to me, I found my fearless presence after a patient walked into my office who had his suicide plan for that evening. And I brought all of myself to the table that day. I brought my exoteric knowledge, all of my clinical expertise, and my esoteric knowledge, those things that I knew in my bones, and that I knew that vision of what I saw was possible for this man that had walked into my office. And bringing together that exoteric and esoteric knowledge is really what Fearless Presence, which is my brand, is about. And he walked out in 90 minutes later, he walked out 90% better. And I walked out with my fearless presence. And so since then, I've really been on this quest to help people bring together their clinical or their professional expertise and their inner knowing. And fearless presence is really foundational to good leadership. You have to bring together what is logical and what you see as possible, what you hold in your leadership vision, what you in those things that you just know in your bones. And bones are physiologically so connected to memory. And in metaphysical systems, bones are also hold our oldest memories. So, we use these phrases in our language saying that we know when we know something is true in our bones. And right now, the reason I'm not in New Orleans, where I live, is because my 86-year-old dad fell last week and fractured his spine and had 7 segments fused. And so he's at a level 1 trauma center right now. And the techniques that you are going to learn today have not only allowed me to lead this situation with my parents to make some difficult decisions and make some, and be really clear about what needs to happen, but also to get my dad's pain down from a 10 out of 10 to like a 2 out of 10 in less than 2 minutes, which then allows him to move and do his physical therapy and try and get better so that he can hopefully be able to come live at home again. And the real magic of all of it is that my mom, who is a hoarder at some level, and she's a collector and of things, that even my mom is now on board with making the necessary changes to allow my dad to come home. And that was one of the things that I thought was going to be really challenging in this situation this morning. I told her, I was like, these are the 3 things that you've got to move if you want him to come home so that there's more space. They live in a 700, I'm sitting on the deck, on the 800 square foot deck of a 700 square foot cabin. And so there's not a lot of room to move. It's a very tiny space. And so to really be able to lead that situation and have them not, have everybody on board and in agreement is a huge win and a new pattern in my relationship with my parents, which is very exciting. So I'm super excited that the exercises we're doing today are literally the ones that that are taped up to the wall of my dad's hospital room right now.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being here in the midst of all of that and for using your tools and really living the work so that we could show up and do this practice today. I'm going to share my screen again, and we will get going into a little bit more of the meat of what we're talking about. So first of all, we're really going to start to shift our perspective to think about that everything we do is to get activation, fuel to certain areas of our brain that might need upregulation, and to help our nervous system stay regulated, right? We are driven by this system that is wired for our survival first and to keep us healthy with a certain level of stress. And so if we think about that, it changes the way that we look at our food behaviors, our addictions, our ability to be present and show up in the world, overtraining, embodiment. All of this comes from the state of our nervous system health. And it's not just a cognitive process to change some of these behaviors or to up-level our life in whatever capacity. It also is deeply rooted in this operating system inside. And I have a quote here from Matt, who is here, but it's from one of our Trauma Rewired episodes. And it says, applied neurology teaches us that average isn't what you're meant to be. Not at all. And the goal is that there is actually hope that you can be more than average. And that means more than your pain, more than your trauma, more than these limitations of a system that is maybe primed for survival and protection. And understanding how to work with that system, how to create positive change in that system is really what allows us to be more than average.
So where we kind of jump in with actual applied neurology is this kind of question, like why the nervous system, why the brain? And the truth is, everything you've ever done is a result of brain function. Like literally everything you felt, from tactile sensation to temperature to an emotional feeling, is all because of the input and processing that happens in your brain and nervous system. And at the most fundamental level, your brain's signals and pathways and firing patterns, that's what has determined who you've been up to this point. And even more importantly, that's what determines who you're going to be in the future. So the good news is, because the brain can change through a process called neuroplasticity, if you don't like what you are, who you are, how you are, or what you have to deal with, you can change it. And I don't mean that to be disparaging, but that is the hope of neurology, that things can be different. So all human change, everything we do, change our behaviors, change our body composition, change our pain level, change our emotional state, change our communication, all of it at a fundamental level is a result of changing in your nervous system, okay? Because everything you are is a result of brain function. So when we look at applied neurology, it was Elizabeth, let's go to the next slide. We talk about a basic system that has 3 parts, and I will talk about in a second after Melanie does this slide. Forgot about that.
So when we want change, it very often feels like we are living the myth of Sisyphus, who was pushing the boulder up the hill. And we get some change and it slips away, and it can feel really hard, like impossible to achieve and also impossible to hold. And when you work with the nervous system, you can stop playing the game of how much can we bear. A lot of us are really just addicted to suffering. And we're always looking for the hardest, or how much can we bear? How much can we hold? And when you work with the nervous system, you get to play a new game. You get to play the game of how good can it get, because it feels safe in your body. And you can completely change the paradigm in which you're working and which you're living. And it changes your mindset. It changes the way you move, and it changes your outcomes and your joy.
Back to that framework model of how we view applied neurology. It's really simple. You got inputs, interpretation, decision, and output. So inputs are the sensory inputs that you know of: your vision, your hearing, your taste, your smell, your touch, plus what we call proprioception, which is where is my body in space, interoception, which is what's going on inside my body, and your vestibular input, which is where am I feeling the effects of gravity. Okay, so you got about 8 different sensory inputs there, or systems, that the brain is receiving at all times. Then in the brain and nervous system, it goes through a series of interpretation, processing, integration, so that it can make a decision about what am I supposed to do about it. And then it generates an output. Okay, so it generates outputs for performance, it generates outputs for pain. So on our next slide, we have basically a spectrum of different outputs. Over on the left side are what we call survival outputs. This is when your brain and nervous system get into survival mode, and they're trying to protect you. They're like, I know you wanted to jump out of that airplane and go skydiving, but I think it would be better if we just freeze right now and don't jump out of the airplane, right? I know you wanted to have that conversation about the thing that's bothering, but I think it would be better if we had a flight response and we leave the premises so we don't have to deal with that trauma. I know you wanted to lift that heavy weight, but instead I'm going to give you shoulder pain to slow you down. So the survival outputs are not necessarily ones that we always choose cognitively, but they are still outputs from our nervous system that are trying to protect us, keep us safe, or also give us kind of an action signal. So over there on that side, you got pain, anxiety and depression, fatigue, fight, flight, or freeze, immobility, migraines, inflammation, neuroticism, dizziness, insomnia, and that's just the beginning of the list. Okay, so we think of those as threat responses or survival outputs. On the right side of the spectrum is what we call your performance outputs. And so clear thinking, regulation, presence, logical decisions, pain-free movement, coordination, great balance, good healthy immune system and hormones, overall good health, great sleep. So those performance outputs are basically what your brain and nervous system are going to do or create or allow to happen when they're feeling safe. Okay, so what output will be created? Because here's the thing, your nervous system can really only create one major output at a time. Like it can put all of its emphasis on one or the other. But with my athletic clients, I go, look, you can't jump and stay on the ground at the same time. It's not going to work. You can't sprint and stand still at the same time. You can't be totally present and in the middle of a freeze response at the same time. It's not going to happen. And you don't always have cognitive control to decide what output will be created. Your nervous system gets to decide. So when it feels safe and not in threat at the moment, it's more likely to give you a performance output. But when it's feeling threat, danger, like it needs to protect you, it's going to give you one of those survival outputs in order to slow you down, make you cautious, or protect you from the imminent threat. So what we try to do in NSI is go, all right, if we want to change the outputs, and in our client sessions, in our group coaching, in our business, among those who we communicate with, if we want to decrease the frequency of those survival outputs, what we need to do is go back to the inputs or the interpretation, because focusing on the outputs isn't really going to change how the rest of the equation works in the beginning. So the way to change the outputs is not to just focus on the outputs, but you got to go back one or two steps in the process.
So keeping this in mind, thinking about all of these things as outputs of your nervous system for the purpose of a neurosomatic framework and for this workshop, we're going to think of your nervous system as a bucket. So visualize the bucket here, and all of your stresses are going into that bucket. It can be your relationship stress, your financial stress. Maybe you've had issues with sleep or emotional processing. But at the same time, there are deficits in all of those different input systems that are also going into that bucket. So maybe you have a problem with your right eye. Maybe your brain's map of where your body is in space is a little bit blurry. Maybe you've had a lot of dissociation in your life and it's hard for you to feel the signals coming from inside of your body. That's called your interoceptive system. Maybe you have some balance issues with the balance system in your inner ear, and all of these little deficits that have never been rehabilitated, these skills that have never been trained. Maybe there's an issue with your breathing. All of those are adding constant second by second stress into the bucket. So we have the stress of life and all those things that we know of and recognize as causing stress. And then we have all these things that are causing stress at a physiological level, at a nervous system level, and the water level in the bucket is rising, 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 rising. Well, our bodies and our nervous systems and our brains, they do have a deep intelligence and understanding that too much stress for too long is not good. It leads to a disease state inside of the body. It leads to inflammation, mental health decline. All kinds of problems can arise from living in a time of chronic stress. And so our survival mind, our survival brain lives in the present moment, and it's going to produce an output that is intended to keep us safe in that moment. It's not thinking about your long-term goals. It just knows, I need the water level in the bucket to come down. I need to reduce the stress level. And so it will start to generate, your system will generate one of those protective outputs that Matt was talking about. Pain is a great behavior change tool of the brain. If you are in pain, you will take smaller steps. You might work out less. You might even go lay down in bed, pull the covers over your head, block out all of that stimulus coming in. And in that moment, that is safer for a brain and a nervous system that has been under too much stress for too long. And so you start to see everything in terms of these outputs that are your brain's best way to keep you safe in that moment. And as we start to work with the different input systems to give clearer, more accurate information to your brain, to make your nervous system function better, you breathe better, you move better, you see better, you balance better, then that water level in the bucket starts to go down. And now you have this room, this space between the top of the water and the top of the bucket, where you can handle the stress of life. You can handle leadership stress, financial stress, relational stress, without experiencing those same protective outputs. And so you start to be able to create resilience in your life by understanding how to heal these deficits and create change in the inputs that you're experiencing. And so when we look at these threat level outputs, there's so many here that we see in our life. It's not just physical pain, but it can also be anxiety that can come from respiration issues, from sensory mismatch issues, from chronic stress over time. We have inflammation, and our thoughts and our emotional experience can be driven by this state inside of our nervous system. We can be stuck in negative thought loops or emotional reactivity. We can have a system that is not only experiencing poor quality inputs that leads it to be under stress all of the time, but also that's interpreting those inputs with a lot of threat, a lot of stress. And then you get this really hyperactive response driving you into fight, flight, freeze. So a lot of what we do is also not just work on training the input systems, but how our brain and our body and our nervous system interpret those inputs. We can have vertigo, immobility, our addictive behaviors, and binge eating. So there's so much here that is driven really by the state of our nervous system.
So what is neurosomatic intelligence? It's the ability to recognize how the nervous system inputs are affecting the outputs and transform the neural pathways for positive change. When you try to, like I'll say, even within my own profession, a lot of techniques try to rewire the nervous system at a different level than where the problem is or where the behavior is coming from. And most of these outputs, as Matt and Elizabeth said, like, they're subconscious. You're not consciously choosing, oh, this stress is going to give me a headache. Your nervous system makes that choice for you. And these outputs really allow you, if we go to the next slide, to transform your thoughts, beliefs, and actions. Like, your beliefs live in your brain and in your nervous system in a very specific way. And your mechanics, the way your body moves, informs your brain, or it creates kind of a filter. So part of what I teach in this program is how to evaluate people's mechanics as a whole. And really, I know exactly when to ask somebody if they're in suicide ideation, because that shows up mechanically, and their brain is not getting clear information from their body through their vagus nerve, which is 80% from your body to your brain. It's only 20%, it's 80% input, it's only 20% output. And if you're not getting good, clear input, you're not going to get good output. And the clues to that are in the way you move, in your biomechanics, in your range of motion, and in your the different systems that Matt mentioned. And so when you work with the techniques that we have, when you work with the nervous system, you get improvements in how you feel, how you move through the world, and to really have the positive adaptation that you want. And it removes all of the or more easily removes than other approaches I've seen, some of the shame and guilt and everything that can be associated with being with identifying yourself as a procrastinator. If you're just experiencing shame in general, because we teach techniques to rewire shame, or if you're feeling shameful about your eating disorder or your body weight, or your leadership abilities or your potential, just seeing it as input output really takes the emotional weight of that, and gives you the power to really transform it.
Before we go on, if you're a coach, a therapist, a practitioner, and you know that you are really interested in incorporating neurosomatic intelligence into your practice,
The next steps for you are going to be, first of all, to keep an eye out in your inbox. You're going to be receiving a lot more information from us about the course, about future trainings, and we're also going to send you some episodes of the Trauma Rewired podcast that feature myself and Matt and Melanie, where we take a much deeper dive into this course, how it was formed, about our educational backgrounds, and what you can expect. You'll also get a really good feel for us, for our teaching style, and for these deep concepts that we're taking to the level of the nervous system. And then if, as you're listening to that and exploring for yourself, and you think, I really want to bring this work into my work with clients and into my own life to accelerate client outcomes, to start to bridge the gap between mindset and somatics, and to really distinguish yourself as a leader in your field, then book a discovery call with me. We are taking enrollment for the next cohort, and there is an early registration price. So I would love to chat with you and see if this framework and these tools are the right fit for you and your business. So you can book a discovery call with me through the link below, or you can go to the website, neurosomaticintelligence.com, and click book a discovery call. And I would love to speak with you today.
I'm sure you have all heard of this from pharmaceutical usage and even over-the-counter medications. But minimal effective dose is about how can I utilize the least amount of the intervention to get the desired result. I want to, like for an over-the-counter med, I want to take as little as possible. And if you get too little, there's not an effective change that takes place. If you get too much, it becomes a harmful dose. You're looking for right in the middle, that sweet spot, which in our graph here is at the top of the green part of the curve, because that's the greatest effective change or adaptation that's going to be created. So the nervous system kind of works the same way. When we're going to train the nervous system, right? Because quick review, all those things that were listed on outputs before, the most important thing to recognize is that those outputs are not the actual problem. Okay, if it's anxiety or depression or binge eating or fatigue, weakness, physical pain, that whole long list that was there, those are not the actual problem themselves. Those are the symptoms. Those are the outputs. We want to go back and look at the inputs and look at the interpretation. So it can be tempting to go, I'm just going to give all new inputs, just throw the whole kitchen sink at this thing and try to change it all really quickly. And when you do that, the nervous system is probably going to totally freak out because it's way too much input or too much stimulus and it can't handle it. So you have to find the right dosage for training the nervous system. And this is one of the things that we really focus on when we teach you all the drills and we give you all the tools and the assess and reassess. All of that is still with the context that you have to find the right dosage for each individual nervous system. There is no such thing as one size fits all in this type of recovery and training. It's one size fits one. So you have to learn the ability to assess and reassess your own nervous system or those clients that you're working with so that you can figure out, how do I hit the sweet spot and create the most positive change without pushing them into a big crash or a setback. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at as we go into the assess reassess.
Awesome. And I just want to echo a little bit on, or jump on to what Matt was saying a little bit, because this is a question I get asked a lot, like what's the difference between polyvagal work or some other kind of somatic program and NSI. And one of the key distinguishing factors for me is that we are really teaching that concept of when you're working with the nervous system, N equals 1. And a lot of this program is really about understanding what is happening in the brain and the nervous system. How do we assess, reassess? How do we teach our clients to assess, reassess, and be the expert of their own nervous system, so that it's not just a blanket set of exercises, but it's about finding the right tools for the right person at the right dose, because you have enough of an understanding of all of the different parts of the nervous system in the brain to be able to do that for your clients. So what we're going to start with is the assess, reassess process. So it's important to understand that change at the level of the nervous system is instantaneous, it's light and quick. And so you can always use simple assessments to know if the stimulus that you are providing yourself or your clients is actually creating positive change in the nervous system and it's actually at the right dose. So we can use something like range of motion. We could use our breath, we could use our ability to balance, even your vision to test if you are getting a positive assessment. You could use your vocal tone. When my vocal tone drops lower, that's a good sign that it's a positive response. So we're going to use an assessment to see how these exercises are affecting our nervous system. So the first thing we're going to learn is a little bit of rotation, full body rotation, as a range of motion assessment for our nervous system. So if you are in a place where you can stand up, let's go ahead and do that. If you're seated, that's fine. I'll show you a way to do this seated too. So we're just going to simply take our arms out in front of us. I like to lock my elbows so I make sure I'm not crossing my body with my arms. Fingers are pointing straight out. And I'm going to let my entire body rotate except for my feet, which stay facing straight forward. And I'm just going to do that a couple times. I always get the question, how do we know we're not just warming up? So do it a few times until you hit the same end range of motion. You'll know you're not just warming up because sometimes it won't be positive and you'll actually lose range of motion. So you want to do it until you hit the same end range each time. Make sure that you can come back to that exact same spot on the floor. We want these to be as measurable as possible. So have something to mark on the floor where you're standing and notice what your fingers are pointing to. If you're seated, you could always just cross your hands over your chest and do a little thoracic rotation and notice what you're looking at. You could do it with your fingers out too, seated, and do some trunk rotation and notice what you're pointing to. Just make sure you're always coming back to standing or sitting in the same spot so that you know that you are measuring correctly. We can also test our shoulder range of motion. So when we do this, we're just going to bring our elbow up to about shoulder height. I like to take my hand on my collarbone so that I know my scapula is not moving. I want to be really precise with this again. And I'm just going to internally rotate my shoulder and notice without my elbow dropping, how far down does my hand go? And again, you can do it a couple times so that you know you're not just warming up. If you have one arm that's a little tighter than the other, maybe do it on the tighter side and don't move into pain, but do it somewhere where you're going to be able to notice a little bit of a difference. Where you have a little bit of restriction, sometimes it's easier to tell if we're getting a positive response. So when our nervous system feels safer, it allows us to have more range of motion, unless we're hypermobile, which is something else to address. But when our nervous system and brain feel safer, it trusts us to have better quality movement. It's okay. It's safe to have more movement, to relax the body a little bit. And so you'll see as we do these exercises, if it's a positive response for your nervous system, your range of motion will increase. And so we want to find a space maybe where there's a little bit of constriction, a little bit of tension, so that we can feel if that changes as we start to introduce new stimulus. And then Melanie's going to take us through assessing the breath.
Okay, to assess your breath, you want to put one hand on your chest, just like on your breastbone in the center, and put your other hand comfortably on your back. And if you can't get all the way up to your rib cage, it's okay to be low here. You don't have to get all the way up high, but be as comfortable as you possibly can. And just take a few deep breaths. And what you want to note is what's happening between your front hand and back hand. Are they moving? Are you getting equal excursion where they're both expanding forwards and backwards? Or is all the movement in your front hand and your back hand is completely still? Or maybe your back hand is sliding up and down while your front hand is going forwards and backwards. So just assess what's happening. Ideally, you want equal excursion, that you're getting expansion, you're getting full expansion of your rib cage. But most people that I see don't have that to start with. And that even includes yoga instructors, breathwork practitioners. And sometimes those people even have the most dramatic restrictions in their rib cage area, and they're trying to solve their own problem. They know they need, excuse me, they know they need the breath work. So just assess it and just take note of what the pattern is.
All right, time for our first actual input. So we're going to do activation of cranial nerve 1, which is your olfactory nerve, your sense of smell. And this is a great reset because smell is pretty much the only sense that goes directly to the upper part of the brain. Okay, so we don't go into crazy neural pathways today, but it hits what's called an olfactory bulb, goes right to the thalamus. So it bypasses your brainstem, bypasses the cerebellum, all these areas where pretty much every other sensory input kind of hits those areas, other than vision and smell. So it's a great one to start with to get some input that's gentle and calming or activating right into the brain itself. So this is where you're going to need your item that you brought that you like the smell of. So have that nearby. You need to choose which reassessment you want to use. So go ahead and pick one that we've done that's your favorite or seems to be the most telling for you or easiest to do, and set a new, go ahead and set a baseline. Okay, so I'll do my rotations here. Baseline rotation. And I've already warmed that up prior. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to close one nostril and we're going to smell through the open nostril while we're also tapping on that side of the nose. So it's smell and tap at the same time. And as you do this over 2 or 3 breaths, you want to ask yourself, how intense is the smell on a scale of 1 to 10? And also, can I identify what the smell is? Like, you know what's written on the bottle, but does it actually smell like that? So after you smell on that one side, reassess your range of motion. Mine got considerably worse. So that would tell me smelling on my left side, not so good. That's not a drill that I would now use to practice when I need to regulate my nervous system or calm down. And in fact, I'm actually really out of breath now just from standing here speaking. So smell on the left side was actually kind of dysregulating for me. Hopefully not for you. So I'm going to go try the right side. So I'll plug my left nostril. I'm going to smell on the right as I tap. 2 or 3 long exhales there, and then reassess. Oh, awesome reassessment. I'm flipping all the way around on my body rotation. I feel like I can breathe. My voice actually dropped a little bit. That vocal tone Elizabeth was talking about sounds better. Okay. Crazy, right? How fast things can change. So what I would learn from this for myself is smell on the right side is a very good regulating tool for me. I wouldn't use left. That would make me worse. I just ignore that. But on the right side, that's the one that I want to keep. So smell can become one of my high payoff, really go-to regulating drills if I smell it on the right side. Improves range of motion, which let's translate that backwards just before we move on. If our range of motion gets better, that means the threat level in that bucket went down. We decreased our threat level, so our nervous system gave us more movement. That's what we're looking for, right? Where my range of motion got worse, that means threat was increased on that side, and my nervous system ended up hitting the brakes and going, whoa, hold on there, buddy. No movement right now. But on the right side, it lowers the threat and my movement improves. So make a note, whichever side made you better, that's the one you want to hold on to.
Okay, so this is the helical breathing is a fantastic exercise for decompressing your vagus nerve at multiple levels where it gets stuck, because it goes all the way from your brainstem to your pelvis. To do that, you first want to cross your left ankle in front of your right, and you could do this in standing or in sitting. I'm sitting right now. And then you want to take your right hand and reach across your body as far as you can to your left thigh, and then put your left hand behind your head if you have the motion to do that. And now in this position, you're going to inhale into the backside of your heart. So you want to expand your rib cage towards whatever is behind you. So I'm going to breathe towards the deck rail or the trees behind me. So inhale for a count of 5 or so, hold for a count of 8, and you can count really fast if you need to, but inhale, hold, and then a long exhale, like you're blowing through a straw. And just do 3 to 5 of those. So you're going to inhale, expanding your rib cage backwards, hold your breath, and then blow out. And one more time. And if you want to imagine that I love to integrate an Andean proverb with this one, that your future is behind you, propelling you forward, and your past is in front of you, waiting to make peace and clear your way. And so as you breathe into the backside of your ribs, you're breathing into your future that has your back, and then go ahead and retest and see what's better. And this is an exercise, typically you only go this direction. If you had a negative response, you can try the other way, but because in all humans, the right side of the diaphragm has more muscle mass than the left, this takes you out of right-sided diaphragm dominance, which is a widespread problem.
Awesome. And if you guys want to let us know in the chat how you're reassessing, if you're finding positive improvement with some of these, we love to hear that. Breathing into the back, and we can answer more questions as we go, but sometimes it helps to like stand against the wall or be up against your chair so that you have some external stimulus there to breathe into. You can use a band and wrap it around your rib cage so you have a little resistance to press into. And if you can't breathe into your back, that's okay. And don't get too hung up on that for today. We're just teaching you a couple tools, and over time, that body awareness and ability to feel that sensation of breathing into the back body may change in time. So also, you guys may notice my vocal tone dropped a little. So these have been positive for me. And I'm the opposite of Matt. My left nostril gets a really positive response. And so you can see also too that working with the nervous system, everyone is different. And so we do really need to assess and reassess what works well for us, and have that as the tool that I go to. It's going to be different from Matt or from any of you guys.
Yeah.
So
Well,
the
and
next thing okay.
I'll just chime in really quickly. I get a positive response on both sides. So so we're all different.
Totally. So the next thing we're going to do is a little bit of sensory stimulus for our feet. This really helps in creating a clearer body map for our brain and understanding of where we are in space, and can help to ground us to feel more centered and present. But again, everyone is different. So make sure you go ahead and do an assessment so that you have your baseline. And then we're going to grab our cloth. I'd prefer for you not to use your own hand. If you're wearing socks, that's fine. You don't need an extra cloth, but grab some kind of cloth for sensory stimulus. And then we're going to test each foot individually. So I'm going to start on my right foot. I'm going to take my cloth and I'm just going to start to rub on my foot. If it feels okay, close your eyes so that you can be really present to the sensory sensation of this. And you want to stay as grounded and connected as possible. So I like to ask myself questions like, do I feel this toe? Do I feel this toe? How does this feel? Or maybe name the areas of the foot that you're touching. Make sure to get the bottom and the sides. If you have any tattoos or scars, give that maybe a little bit of extra love. The sensory stimulus can be, really powerful there. Forgot to change my slide. And just get it all around there. And then when you feel like you've got a good, clear picture, maybe visualize in your mind an image of your foot, then we'll come back up. We'll come back to our standing position or seated position. If you've stayed seated, take a breath. Take a nice long exhale, give the nervous system just a beat to adapt to that. And then reassess your range of motion. Maybe notice too, do you feel your right foot more than your left foot? Do you feel a little more grounded, a little more present? Does one foot, the foot we gave sensory stimulus to your right foot, does it feel bigger, more connected to the earth? And then let's try it for our left foot too. So same thing, you'll bring your foot up and just start to rub, getting all of your toes, asking yourself questions. Can I feel this? How about this? If it feels okay, close your eyes and create a mental picture of your foot in your mind. And try to stay as present as possible. So we're not just kind of spacing out and rubbing our foot, but we're really examining and being curious to make sure you get the bottom of your foot, the sides, the ankle. Make sure you're continuing to breathe, taking nice long exhales as you do this. And maybe one more breath while doing that. And then relax. Reassess. And notice how your brain, your body, and your nervous system responded to those particular inputs. Maybe it was good on one side and bad on the other. It's completely possible and completely okay. And for today, all we would do is set the one that wasn't positive on the shelf and say, that's just not my tool for now. And just hold on to the other one so that you have it in a moment where you're starting to feel stressed or dysregulated, or you can do it daily to help bring regulation and safety to your nervous system. And again, let us know what's going on in the chat. We love to hear it.
All right, this one is pretty cool. We're going to do a drill called yes, yes, no, no, which is technically a VOR, or vestibulo-ocular reflex, just in case anyone around has a little neurology in your background. So here's the thing about this exercise. There's a saying in applied neurology that areas or systems that lie closer to the brain have greater influence on brain activity. When we do this drill, we are activating both your visual and your vestibular system, which live inside your cranium with your brain. So as far as proximity, they are real close. That's the technical term, real close to your brain. So they have lots of influence over brain activity and how the brain will respond. That means they're very powerful exercises. And we know from Spider-Man that with great power comes great responsibility. Okay, so all of that is to say, if you start to feel dizzy or woozy or kind of disoriented or even nauseous at all during these next two exercises, stop the drill. Okay, do not proceed, do not pass go. So just monitor yourself as we go through it. On the other hand, these are often the exercise that gives people a humongous positive response. Because when we get the visual and vestibular systems on the same page and integrating, their brain goes, wow, I can totally connect to my environment, and my threat goes way down. So their anxiety drops, their brain fog goes away, their depression kind of relieves, and they feel much more connected after doing this. So it's one of those where if we were looking at a graph of minimal effective dose, rather than a nice gentle curve of the graph, this might be like a giant spike, a way up, huge possibility. But if I go too fast, it's going to come crashing back down really quickly. Okay, so tread carefully, but try this with me. If you have a history of vertigo or dizziness or recurrent nausea, you definitely want to stay seated and maybe even hold on to the chair. Okay, so play it safe on this one. Here's how the exercise actually goes. So the guy in the image is demonstrating the no-no version of this. So let's do that one first. So you're going to hold out your thumb. You'll use your thumbnail as your visual target. So keep your eyes fixed on your thumbnail. You're going to gently rotate your head side to side, like you're saying no, while your eyes stay fixed. So you just want to do 8 to 10 head rotations. Okay, not a huge amount, nothing crazy. Make sure you can see the target with both eyes. So these are fairly small. All right, and then perform your reassessment. So I'll try my rotations again. Those are looking pretty good. If that felt really easy, like super easy for you, and then your reassessment was like, nah, no change, you may be able to handle a faster or longer duration version of the exercise. You can do more. Okay. If it felt a little dicey and you didn't feel so good, you might need a little bit less. So this is where that dosage comes into play. So that's the no-no. Okay. As you practice it and get more comfortable with that exercise, you eventually want to be able to do head rotations fast for about 30 seconds without getting dizzy. That's the goal to move toward. All right. So just like any other kind of training, if we were doing personal training or gym training or yoga, Pilates, running, you're gonna, when those training modalities, you're always going to increase the load a little bit as you progress and get better at the skill, right? So the same thing will happen with your nervous system exercises, that as you practice these over the next few weeks, you get better and better and better at the skill. You give yourself a little more duration, a little more challenge to get that system working better. Okay. All right, let's go to the yes, yes. So same idea. Hold your thumb out. Your thumbnail is still your target. You're going to nod your head vertically, like you're saying, yes, I love this drill. Yes, nervous system work is awesome. So up and down 8 to 10 times. That's great. Go ahead and reassess. Okay, so to use a baseball analogy, I don't know if we have any sports fans in here, but in my no-no, and when I did those, I probably hit a single because it was a good reassessment. When I did my yes, yes, I hit a home run. Great reassessment for me. So I would practice both because they're both positive, but I would go back to that yes, yes exercise more frequently because it made a greater change. So when I really need to regulate, when I need to calm down my system, or in some cases, activate my system, be more present in the environment, I would go to the yes, yes as my home run high payoff. All right, next slide. So we've gone through 4 or 5 different exercises now. Okay, smell, helical breathing, foot sensory inputs, yes, yes, no, no. So what I want you to do here is at least, first of all, make sure that you know which ones are positive for you. So you wrote those down, take some notes. Okay, share your wins, put something in the chat. What made you better? What actually changed? How did you feel? Did you have less pain? Did you have better range of motion? Okay, we want to know what happened, and everybody else wants to know what happens too. So the process here is basically, I love the graphic here, like win again, win more, right? Counting your wins and being aware of these things is a way to get your nervous system to really integrate and respond in a more ongoing way. So you start with the assess, reassess. You provide the stimulus to your nervous system that it needs and it likes, and then you give it time to integrate, and then just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That's the process, okay?
We're going to hear a testimonial from one of our neurosomatic intelligence coaches in just a minute. But if you are going through this workshop and really experiencing some shifts in your body and maybe connecting some dots about how your nervous system has been driving your behavior and how it drives the outcomes that your clients are experiencing, and you know that you want to start to bring this framework and these tools into your coaching, into your therapy, then I would love to chat with you. So you can book a discovery call with me. We are now enrolling for the next cohort, and there is an early registration price for people who register before the end of the year. So hop on over to neurosomaticintelligence.com and just click book a discovery call, or you can go to the link below and set up a time. We'll chat and see if this is a right fit for you.
I have another MSI practitioner, Carrie, here, who's a somatic coach and a somatic stylist, and I would love for her to share a little bit about how she's been able to incorporate the tools into that practice, because I think it's just really important to hear what people are actually doing with this work and how it creates change. Are you here, Carrie?
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good to see you.
So, do you want to ask some questions, or just want me to share my experience?
Yeah, just share for like a minute or two about your experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, I came across you about 1.5 years ago, and we got started, and I was like blown away by your work, but I was already embedded in another program that was like very somatic, but not very successfully somatic. I've done a lot of somatics for about 20 years, and I would hit a wall where I wasn't breaking through what I needed to build my capacity. And then, with pandemic, COVID, all of those things, my capacity really changed medically. And the medical system couldn't help me. Coaches couldn't help me. Like, no one could help me. And so what I found was this work gave me limits and boundaries that were safe to assess like where I was at, but also to really work with my clients when I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to get them out of this fight or flight state where no other somatic technique would work. I can really work with them now and say, okay, this is where we are. This is what we need to look for. And they have autonomy. They have power. I have autonomy now for the first time in years. And, when I got into the coaching industry like 10 years ago, I was really looking for that, and I didn't find it until now. And it's been a really big game changer in my life on how I assess my whole entire world, how I relate to my own body, and like my own triggers and trauma response. I really have like some altitude around who I am and what I go through. And I have a lot less judgment on my own experience and my own journey, right? And I can really respect other people's journeys on a deeper level. So I'd say I have like my compassion pool is like so much bigger for humankind. I mean, like, this is a no-brainer for anyone who is like thinking that this would be a great addition to their world. It's a total no-brainer.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for sharing that. And it has been really, really awesome to watch how you have used this work to create such dramatic change for yourself, and your dedication to it. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let me share my screen again. Hang on. Back to this. Okay, there we go. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about how we actually use these tools in a practical application. So there's two main ways that we use the NSI tools. One is as rescue drills or rescue tools. So when we're in a situation, we have to start to understand our nervous system and the signals that it is sending us. And when we start to feel dysregulation happening in our body, we start to feel signs that we're moving into threat. Maybe our respiration increases, maybe we're experiencing a little bit of pain, you feel a headache coming on, or you're just about to do something that is typically stressful for you, give a presentation, have a difficult conversation, all of these things, then you can have your high payoff tools, the ones that you found that made a dramatic impact, that home run drill that Matt was just talking about, that has a really dramatic positive effect on your nervous system. And you can use that tool in the moment of stress to help your system re-regulate, create safety, and have a different outcome with whatever it is that you're going to do. So we use our drills that are high payoff, our tools that are high payoff in the moment of stress, and when we want to perform, to create an optimal experience or to move out of an old pattern that we don't want. And at the same time, we understand, okay, got it. And when we're doing this, we're helping our nervous system regulate. And we do want to clarify that when we're talking about nervous system regulation, we're not talking about a steady state all of the time. We don't want to flatline our experience of the world. The nervous system is meant to modulate between a more activated state and then coming down out of that activated state into a place where it can rest, digest, repair, recover, so that we can positively adapt to the stress that we've experienced. But we're never just flatlining. So I think sometimes people get the idea that if they start to regulate their nervous system, they'll be boring or calm all of the time, or that that's what it should look like, this even keel state of no activation. And that's just not true. That's not the way that we're built. But it's also not great to be in these huge highs and these huge lows, or to get stuck in any one particular state, either a very activated state where we're in panic and anxiety and a lot of sympathetic nervous system activation, or in underactive state where we're maybe in a little bit of a freeze response, we're disconnected from our body, we're immobilized. We want to be able to modulate between these states so that we have the right amount of activation, the right amount of sympathetic activity. Without that, I couldn't be moving, talking, engaging with people. And then we want to be able to come down out of that state when it's appropriate, have less sympathetic activity, more parasympathetic, rest, digest, calm, and respond. So as we're using our rescue tools to work with our nervous system, it's not that we're trying to always stay in one steady state, but we're helping our system to be able to flow between these states and to have the right amount of activation that it needs for the task at hand, and to get better and better at adapting and not getting stuck in any place.
So beyond just the reset idea, like I can use a high performance drill when I need it, I can re-regulate myself when I get off. What really makes a long-term change in your nervous system is daily, regular practice. So it's kind of like everything else. Like if you're practicing meditation, mindfulness, yoga, running, you have to create new habits and routines around those practices for them to be able to take hold in your body and start to create physical, mental, and emotional changes. Nervous system training is the same thing. So when we talk about wanting to engage the power of neuroplasticity to rewire the brain, that isn't something that happens with just one drill. It's something that requires repetition and a certain level of focus and intensity on that change to make it more lasting, permanent change. So the way to do that, what the research actually shows, is that very short duration, consistently repeated exercises. So we're talking about multiple times per day, right? In the literature on this, they demonstrate that 20 minutes per day creates the greatest amount of neuroplastic change, but it can't just be 20 minutes in one section of the morning. It's best done like if you break it up into 4 sections of 5 minutes each, or 5 sections of 4 minutes. Like you just spread it out over the day every few hours and you repeat your drills. That's when you create the greatest change over time. And then, like I said earlier, with any other training, you're going to have to increase your challenge, increase your intensity. So in these exercises, you can add speed, you can add a different body position, like moving from seated to standing, or from standing to, some of them you can do while you're walking. You can increase the repetitions, and often you can stack them together and do them at the same time. So in neuro training, stacking is a very, very important concept that lets you get more benefit, because when you stack drills, the resulting effect is greater than the sum of their individual parts. So it's not 1 + 1 = 2, it's like 1 + 1 = 29. Okay, so the more that you grow in these skills and these exercises and begin to stack them together, you're going to create more powerful inputs to be able to rewire and change the nervous system. Okay. The other part of daily training, down at the very bottom of this slide, is acknowledging your wins in the process. Right? Counting your wins is a big driver of the dopamine release that happens to build a new habit or to create a new behavior. And it's going to build your motivation to do more. So every time you do your neuro exercises, you want to do the reassessment of your range of motion. That's what shows your brain the evidence that it's actually working. And every night or maybe the next morning, you want to look back and kind of count the wins and go, hey, I regulated today. Hey, I did my drills today. I handled that conversation way better than I would have in the past. I led that group with like grounded presence and mindfulness during the whole thing. I didn't leave my body and dissociate. I didn't get anxious. Those are big wins. And the more that you celebrate those, the more the nervous system recognizes that that's the way it wants to let them move into and lean into that state of being. Because it goes, hey, everything is better. It's more effective. It's easier. It's just more healthy. And so with more repetition, that's the way that it's going. So daily practice, it becomes a huge, huge part of the NSI process. Is this me too? Okay, sorry. I forgot about this slide too. So the thing about taking that daily practice and putting it into more of an emotional or somatic healing and trauma recovery lens is that one of the big things in NSI is, go down to the bottom of the slide with me, we don't have to re-traumatize ourselves to heal from trauma. We actually try to avoid that in NSI, where we're going, okay, trauma lives in the past. What we want to do is train our nervous system, educate our nervous system how to repattern itself from here to the future. So we don't need to go back to that past in order to do this type of nervous system training, okay? Like the trauma lives in our body, it lives in our nervous system, it drives our behavior. But as we start engaging in these practices and building new neural pathways, we are taking and going forward. Like we're going, okay, I'm with my nervous system to disengage from that old pattern of behavior and to train it and open up a new opportunity for a different strategy, a different way of dealing with the conversations, the leadership, and the challenges in a way that doesn't make me go dysregulated in the process. So that's also part of that big daily practice concept.
We are opening now for early registration, and there's quite a few bonuses that you will get with the course when you early register. You get access to one of Melanie's vagus nerve decompression courses. You get an additional month of membership on my brain-based wellness site. You get a bonus savings for registering early of $1,000. And so there's a lot of awesome little extra workshops that you'll receive as well, workshops that Melanie and I have done together. So if you're interested in learning more about the course, again, make sure you check the emails, listen to the Trauma Rewired episodes. They're going to give you a really good foundational understanding of what neurosomatic intelligence is, the concepts that we explore, looking at the many ways our nervous system impacts our behavior, our beliefs, and the outcomes that we experience in our life. And then if you feel ready, book a discovery call with me so that I can learn more about your business and we can discuss together if this is the right fit for you and get you registered if you are ready to begin this journey. The next cohort will be starting in a few months, but we are opening up now and you can begin digesting all that bonus material as a way to get started for the next course.
So if you're somebody who works with clients or patients, this is for you. If you're a leader within your workplace and you're looking to create more communication and trust in your organization, this training is for you. So whether you're an executive coach, a somatic practitioner, relationship coach, I spoke for a group of organizing coaches that are help people organizing professionals and do coach people with ADHD, for example, physical therapists, breath workers. So you can see the list there. There's lots of potential, but this is if you work with other people and you're trying to help them achieve goals and create something different or bigger for themselves, then this training is absolutely for you.
So a little more about the details of the course. It is a 12-week course. We do live lectures with our lead educators every week for 2 hours. And then that also includes a once-a-week coaching call with one of our facilitators. We have some very highly trained and highly educated facilitators that will be working with you to practice the tools, to work on integrating these tools into your business and into your own life, into your own practices. You can also meet there to work in community and practice teaching on one another. This also includes 12 weeks of membership on the brain-based wellness site, where we work on nervous system training live and in community 5 times a week. Everything that we do on the brain-based wellness site is also recorded and put into an on-demand library, so you have access to hundreds of different neuro tools to address specific symptoms like freeze response or anxiety, public speaking, visibility, migraines, or jaw tension. You can search by topic and find neuro tools that work with your unique nervous system. We'll also be teaching you there how to teach others and how to start to assess and reassess and become the expert of your own nervous system. Again, it also includes Melanie's vagus nerve decompression course. And there's the opportunity to meet with other participants in the course and practice pods and practice teaching, practice training your eye as a neurosomatic practitioner so that you feel really confident bringing these tools, this framework, and these ideas to your clients. After the course is done, there's the opportunity to join NSI Plus, which is a year-long continuing education program that includes monthly coaching calls with me, Matt, Melanie, and our facilitators. So it's a really great way to keep deepening your knowledge, and it is totally optional. This course is ICF accredited. It's 30 hours of accreditation through ICF, so you can use that for continuing education credit. And we've had many other participants use this course for continuing education credits in physical therapy, for counseling work, for Pilates or yoga certifications. So if you are a licensed or accredited practitioner in another field, this will often be able to be used for your continuing education credits.
Okay, Melanie, you want to tell us a little bit about what NSI gets?
Yeah. So we have this credentialed through the International Coaching Federation. So if you need continuing education through coaching through ICF, like we've got that covered for you. If you're certified through someone else, we have all of the objectives and goals and schedules and everything that you would need to get it credentialed to submit it to your board for credentialing yourself. So for example, the physical therapists that have taken it from us, they've been able to use that and go get it and get 30 continuing education hours for their licenses. So we're really happy to supply you with all of the, with what you need to make that happen. As you've seen today, these are super practical tools and they're very powerful. And so you're going to get a whole big library of tools that you can use to create these kinds of transformations and more. We're really creating a whole new profession here. This is not like other somatic programs. You will distinguish yourself from other practitioners, and you will also have the reputation as a body whisperer or as the person that has the magic that makes things happen, that creates transformation at a level that they didn't think was beyond what your clients and patients thought was possible. And we love this community. Like we adore our students, and it's super fun to stay connected and to see the wide variety of places that this work is getting used. And that's one of the things that's really so cool about this to me, is that it doesn't need to just live in the medical system. To be able to use it in coaching in, one of our students from the first cohort does relationship coaching, and so she uses it in some really amazing ways. One person I know works with children, and then there's lots of other different types of practitioners. And some of the changes you've seen today, and like I love Lazura's story. We had someone from the last cohort whose emotional flashbacks disappeared with basically one technique. So there's so much potential. Like you really are going to have a big magic bag of magic wands to use with people, and it's all just evidence based. I teach bonus sections on the neuroscience of storytelling and the neuroscience of questions and answers, and you get access to all the material and get to be on the leading edge of this new field.
Wonderful. Before I go into some ways to stay in touch and register, there was a great question here. Matt, I think I'm going to throw this one to you, and then we can chime in on it if we want. But someone was asking about like how coaches use this without violating the licensed therapist's role. And I think that's a good question to address if we want to chime in on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So first thing, step one, regulate yourself. These are so powerful for you to be able to manage your own nervous system, your energy. Like we said at the very beginning of the call, as a licensed therapist, you're kind of the one holding the space. And sometimes you're the one driving the pace of the conversation, or even the direction, to be able to guide that person you're working with. And so in order to do that, to stay present and kind of connected to the present moment and your own body, you have to be able to stay regulated. So that's the first place that I would employ them, and let it, at that point, it might have like a secondary trickle down effect. But the thing about using all of this with clients is, when I look at the research behind neuroplasticity and somatic healing, my response to the current industry is, I say everybody has a nervous system, or usually I say everybody has a brain, and they need to know how to use it. So conversing with clients about their nervous system and how the nervous system works, or leading them to resources where they can read or watch videos and learn some of these things, and even sharing some of the exercises, can be done within the licensure that you currently hold. None of the techniques here are hands-on. None of the techniques are considered therapeutic. And so you're not stretching into the world of like a physical therapist or hands-on practitioner. And 100% of the techniques are active on the part of the client. So nothing is passively done to them. They engage with their own nervous system to accomplish all of the exercises, to assess and reassess, and to choose what their nervous system needs to be able to regulate and perform better. So with all of those things taken into consideration, we actually believe that this can fit within a licensure, such as a licensed therapist or licensed social worker, licensed clinical psychologist. All of those can use these tools and techniques, not only for yourself, but a lot of it will work in your work with clients as well.
Yeah. And as a coach too, a lot of what we're doing is the whole framework that we're teaching clients is how to be the expert of their own nervous system. We're just teaching them about an operating system that they already have, and how to assess and reassess for themselves, and then introducing stimulus, and then giving them a way to see if that's affecting them positively or negatively. And so you do not have to be a licensed clinical anything in order to teach people about their nervous system, to make them the expert of their own nervous system, and to start to provide them with some tools to move their nervous system in a positive direction. And so for people who are licensed for hands-on techniques, we certainly have ways with that, and Melanie does special bonuses for that, but you definitely don't have to be. Everybody, like Matt was saying, everybody has a brain, everybody has a nervous system. We deserve to get to know how it works and how to create positive adaptation in that system. And then I have another question here about, if we've had practitioners from a somatic experiencing background take the course, and how are these complementary? And I'll chime in on that a little bit, because I have done some somatic certifications, and we do have a lot of people coming from Somatic Experiencing Institute, or doing this in conjunction with or instead of that. And the way that NSI really interplays with somatic work is we're giving an understanding of what's going on in the nervous system in the body. And then most importantly, we're teaching tools to work directly with the nervous system to allow the somatic experience to be more safe and more effective. As someone with a high ACE score, I've experienced a lot in somatic practices that my body does release, and that I have experienced big emotional release through my body with big somatic work, and then afterwards experienced a lot of negative protective responses from my nervous system, because it was too much for me at the time, or had a really difficult time integrating the awareness and the releases that I experience in a somatic therapy session. And so having practical, actionable tools that I can use on a daily basis to give my nervous system more resilience so that it can handle that somatic work, and then so that I can work with my nervous system directly to integrate the awareness and the somatic experience, makes a really big difference in being able to sustain that change and that new state of regulation. And also for people who are working in somatic experiencing, it takes a lot for people to be able to come into their body and feel the signals, and that may not be safe. And there may be easier, faster, more practical tools that allow people to come into their body, feel what's happening, respond to it, and process it in a different way, rather than just saying, let's close our eyes, let's go inward, let's focus on our breath, which isn't always safe for everyone.
Finally, if you're an individual who just wants to learn the tools to rehabilitate your own nervous system for self-regulation and resilience, the best place to get started is to join us on the Brain-Based Wellness site. You can go to brainbased.com and click on memberships to get 2 free weeks of live nervous system training with me and my facilitators. We meet on the site 5 times a week, live and in community, to teach you tools to help improve the health of your nervous system, process emotions, and take away those unwanted outputs that are caused by too much stress over time. We meet in community. You'll receive lots of support and guidance. We stay after to answer questions, and it's a really great place to begin the process of becoming the expert of your own nervous system, reducing your stress levels, and really changing the outputs that you experience in your life. We also have a huge on-demand library of neuro tools that you can access all as much as you want during those 2 free weeks. So join us there. We would love to meet you on the site, and you'll be getting more information about that in the emails coming your way as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is really an honor to share this time with all of you. And we hope that you got some really valuable tools, and we also hope to see more of you soon.